Welcome back, everybody, to the Who's Accountable podcast. I'm your creator and founder of this platform. My name is Mahaya Abdul Kawi. I'm also the founder and a representative of the Accountability Party for Human Rights. We are for those who are new to this channel, the Accountability Party for Human Rights, we are a political vanguard organization. We are a collection of men and women, a collection of individuals who have chosen the mission of providing services and resources to the oppressed communities across this country of the working class. And this platform, this podcast, is a way for myself and other members of the party to have a discussion about people and events and current things that happen in our society that we think represent a good example, that provide a good example for us to talk about and to break down how if the people involved held themselves accountable, how they could have had a more productive outcome for themselves and for everyone involved. Now, with that being said, for everybody, I welcome all the new people, and I would like to thank those who have been checking out the previous videos. I would like to thank you for coming back. So, for this video, a common a common theme that I talk about or will find a way to bring up in each video, regardless of the topic, is that the oppressed people, the working class people, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, straight, gay, trans, whatever you may be, the working class embodies a broad spectrum of people. That is for one. So please don't think that you don't have anything related to your brother just because they may look different or come from a different background. The same way that the elites see each other and they know for a fact, oh, he's part of this high society, regardless of what he looks like, he's still one of us in some shape, form, or way. Now, there's still levels to their hierarchy, but they still accept them. But the working class, we are so divided because the same upper echelon, the elites, they have been working since the 1600s to keep us divided, to keep us in the mindset, in the ignorant mindset that we aren't connected. And this has been going on for the last 400 years. So at this point, it is embedded into our DNA, into our way of thinking. That's why it is so hard for people to grasp that the main problems that we face aren't just racism. Racism is a tool of the class war. It's a weapon made during the class war. It's the nuke that was made during World War II. That's all it is. You know how for World War II, you just don't focus on the nukes. When you talk about that war specifically, you go, there's so much about it. We know the enemies, we know the allies, we know the secret experiments going on behind the scenes. We know the countries that were involved, what led up to it, et cetera, et cetera. So let's apply that to the class war as well. Now, if you want to study the nuke, if you want to study racism, yes, that's a part of it, but you have to understand that that is a tool. So you can't just focus on the tool because you can constantly keep making more tools or the same tool in itself. You have to take away the manufacturer, which is the working elites. So in these videos, I'm always going to find a way to bring up the class war in some shape, form, or way, because at the end of the day, that is the fight that myself and this organization, the Accountability Party for Human Rights, we are fighting against. We believe in fairness and opportunity. And the outcome, let the person decide. We as an organization, we are not deciding people's outcomes. All we are doing is providing information, a truth that may not be discussed in popular mediums, so that way everybody moves forward in their life with the same opportunity. We want to help plant the seeds that it's okay to face accountability, because that's how you grow as a human being and become something more. We are able to handle responsibilities for your family, for your community, and eventually in the greater scheme throughout time for your society. But in the reality that we live in what I've been starting to call it a trickle down ego, which to me is very correlated with trickle down economics, which is the belief that if the top is doing well, then it will eventually fall down to the average Joe, and that we will all be fine based off of how fine the upper elites are. It's a bunch of bullshit, pretty much. So what I've been calling is trickle down ego, which is the status quo that is enabled by the elites at the expense of the working class. The fueling of you can do whatever you want, you can have whatever you want, is fueling our dopamine, fueling our primitive desires, instead of helping us grow into desires that are evolved and aren't so materialistic. They set the status quo. And it's easy for them to fill their primitive desires when they're also able to live evolved desires. And some desires that clearly come straight out of boredom. So that is the enemy that we are facing. Not just the class war and the race war and these attacks, and this new Cold War, which I'll bring into this conversation eventually. We're also fighting a spiritual war. It's the ego, it's the status quo. Because we can provide sources all day long, we can try to plant seeds, we can try and spread information all we want. People have to be in their hearts willing to accept. Well, first they have to be open and then be willing to accept what is being presented to them. And although I push everybody, I will give them the benefit of the doubt that Uncle Sam is very, very powerful. And the brainwashing tactics are very influential. Because again, this has been going on for 400 years plus. So they've had time. And every time the people have had a fighting chance, it was taken away. So we are always starting from scratch. But currently right now, as we get out of as we are entering a post-COVID world, we find ourselves still in a situation where I believe we're entering the last chapter of America's true reign as a dominant power. And I say that is because you can only live in your ego for so long before you face hubris. And I think right now we're facing hubris. And amongst the many signs and the many obvious truths about the accountability that is coming to America and its future, because the crimes that this country has done, is doing, and very obviously going to continue, it's going to catch up eventually. You know how we say that about, the common working class folk when they commit crimes? It's all going to catch up to you eventually. Well, that applies to everybody. Nobody escapes accountability. Trust me. But one of the ways I see this happening is through the vaccine. And again, I said in a previous video, I am not somebody that is taking the vaccine for my own personal reasons. I'm not here to debate it. I honestly don't give a fuck if you take it or if you don't take it. I'm not an anti-vaxxer where I'm out here trying to spread why people, again, I don't give a fuck. I'm just not taking it for personal reasons. I would like to have a discussion, an open-minded discussion about those reasons, and we can conversate. But other than that, I'm not taking it. And I say that because although I'm not taking it, as a human being, seeing other people who I care about trying to work up in a system that I am fighting against, I will have an opinion, though, that should still be heard, regardless of if I'm taking it or not. You know? So what I'm about to speak is more so not just Americans taking the vaccine. Again, I don't want to always come at Americans, although I can, and although I don't like to give anybody excuses, and on the individual level, we do play our part. Again, the benefit of the doubt, Uncle Sam is a very powerful enemy. More so, what I want to talk about is not just Uncle Sam, but his other rich friends around the world who are being stingy with the vaccine. The United States, Canada, the UK, and the European Union, because the UK Brexited their asses out of there, they have access to more than 50% of the world's vaccine doses. According to Our World in Data, 120 million people in the United States alone received at least a single vaccine jab by April 8th. Now, according to the stats right here, this is 12 times higher than the total number of people who have received the vaccine in the entire continent of Africa. Imagine Africa in your head. Huge. Oh, wait. Which right here says 4 times the population of the United States. So I just want to kind of back out from there because that's kind of enough that I have. Outside of the obvious, yes, Africa is black people, and we can put this into the conversation of how this is just another example of black people being put on the backboard of care in capitalism's eyes. We can see it that way and still get upset and still fight, or we could also look at it like, wait a minute. This is not just one country in Africa. This is a whole fucking continent that has only received a 12th, not even a fucking 8th, a 12th of fucking what these countries have received. The wealthiest countries in the world. And you can look at, if you've taken a world history class, you can see how that's probably, well, not even probably, how that's deep rooted into a bigger problem and how Africa was pimped the fuck out of its resources and its soul. But it's not just Africa that's suffering as well. Let's look at India right now, who's having a surge in viruses. Let's talk about how India, who is predicted to be one of the next booming economies, America's trying to get all buddy with India for economic reassurance because India is close to China and Russia and other Asian powers. America is scared to lose India. So if you're scared to lose this relationship that is only solely for your benefit, because high key, India does not need you at all. You were being selfish with the vaccine while they're having a surge. And then you have Americans out here thinking like, oh, we went through our thing. I don't give a fuck about them. Why should I care what's going on in India? And anybody that knows me, I'm always going to pit domestic problems first. I said this in the last video. Because we have too many problems here for us to go save the world. But again, COVID is like Thanos. We're all united in fighting this person. This threat. So we can go back to worrying about our own problems after we get this one out of the way. And yet we find Uncle Sam being stingy. Because again, that's the mentality when you're driven by capitalism fully. It's me, 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 me. And then you spread it to your homies. Canada, Britain, the rest of Europe. Now you have your little clique all hoarding this thing while not even properly giving it out to the people, because there's still millions of Americans who haven't received it yet. And then it's if you're going to be, it's when it reminds me, I used to work in several restaurants and catering gigs. They were fun. I enjoyed them. But when I used to work around more wealthier clients, I did notice that it was the wealthier clients who wouldn't really eat all of their food. And then we would have to throw it away. Whereas in the places where it was more so affordable food and, you know, shit like that, yeah, it was always gone. Food was always gone. Yeah, you had people here and there who were wasted, but it was always empty wrappers. And that's kind of how this vaccine is being treated. We have so much that, for one, we're not even a good job at reassuring people to take it. Yeah, people are going to, like, I feel like there's more people out there taking it for petty reasons instead of, like, me, where I have my personal reasons that I have researched for, that I can say, this is why I'm not taking it, that I can agree with. Sorry, it was a bug. I feel like there's so many more who are just taking it because of cultural, political reasons. And that's the dumbest fucking reason to not take something, man. Come on. Because it's sheep mentality. It's herd mentality. And you're still listening to fucking Trump. What the hell? Like, if you're not going to take it, man, please have a valid reason. But it's not even valid. So then we have this overload, and then you have the whole continent of Africa, most of South America, India, and right now, whatever labs they have in India, they've changed. I mean, from what I believe, they're still distributing their own vaccines. But right now, China, India, and Russia, the three main players in this Cold War, although it is predominantly against, predominantly with China and the United States, but Russia and India are important players in this. These countries are the ones that are giving it out. And it's funny because China and Russia and India, their vaccines apparently are having like a lot of backlash. It's not as like strong. It's not as effective as the ones that we have with the Moderna, the Pfizer, and even the Johnson and Johnson. But at the same time, we find it where they're still willing to distribute it out to lower income countries in Eastern Europe, Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia are getting supplies from China. We are already going through a class war in this country. The working class can't afford America riding this hubris to the very end, man. There has to be somebody. I mean, we're going to fight. I mean, please Please don't get that shit twisted. But we can't be fighting a class war and then America is getting it, because this always happens. Whenever the working people tend to get some type of movement going, America has to get the foreign attention involved in some bullshit that we got ourselves into. Come on, man. You know what they're going to have after this? China, India, and Russia are going to have support. Latin America. That's a big-ass continent. Eastern Europe. A lot of poor countries still who were affected by World War II and moving forward. Africa. Come. Don't get me started on that. And Southeast Asia, man. China's out here, like, in that, it's not even to praise China, man. I said it before. Fuck them. Fuck the Chinese government, man. Because they got their own little scheming bullshit that happens as well. But again, at least these guys are playing the villain role so much better. Uncle Sam, you got to do better. There has to be, it's going to, unfortunately, America is going to face accountability in a way that truly strips us of everything. There's accountability where, you kind of see it happening while you're doing it. You're able to try to soften the blow, but you still get something. It's like getting like 2-year, 3-year sentences compared to 50 years. You about to be hit within 50 years, man. And inshallah, this new Cold War drags out long enough where the working class can do enough to kind of fend for our own and be separate. But yeah, man, inshallah, because Uncle Sam is truly shooting himself in the foot and the leg and the stomach and shit, man. Just off yourself at this point.